At 35, Larry Bird could still produce 49 points, 14 rebounds, 12 assists, and 4 steals against one of the strongest teams in the NBA. Between games, he sometimes lay on his stomach beside the Celtics bench because his back no longer allowed him to sit normally. His touch had not disappeared. His understanding of basketball had not slowed. The body was simply granting him fewer chances to use either one. Long after Bird retired, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was asked to name the greatest opponent he had faced across 2 decades in the league. Kareem's answer was simple. The best guy I played against might have been Larry Bird. Bird had won 3 championships and 3 consecutive Most Valuable Player awards without looking faster or more explosive than the men guarding him. He saw plays earlier, prepared longer, and treated discomfort as evidence that the work was not finished. That habit made him great. It also made stopping almost impossible. In the summer of 1985, at the height of his career, Bird went home to Indiana and began shoveling crushed rock for his mother's new driveway. He could have hired anyone. He chose to do it himself. The answer begins in French Lick. Bird was born on December 7, 1956, in West Baden Springs, Indiana, and grew up nearby in French Lick with 5 siblings. His mother, Georgia, worked 2 jobs, and poverty shaped the family's ordinary decisions. Bird later said that growing up poor continued to motivate him after basketball made him wealthy. Security could vanish, useful people did their own work. Comfort was never permanent. Basketball offered a rare bargain. Repetition produced visible results. More hours created a better shot. Better positioning created another rebound. Wearing number 33 after his older brother Mark, Bird used the game to build order inside an uncertain home. By his senior year at Springs Valley High School, Bird was averaging 31 points and 21 rebounds and had become the school's career scoring leader. More important than the totals was his method. If a defender removed one angle, Bird spent the next practice constructing another. If an opponent was stronger, he learned where the rebound would fall before strength became relevant. Repetition, memory, and touch made him dominant in a small Indiana gym. They did not prepare him to feel at home in a much larger world. Indiana University offered him a scholarship to play for Bob Knight. Bird arrived in Bloomington in the fall of 1974 and lasted 24 days. The campus felt enormous and distant from everything he understood, so he went home. After briefly attending Northwood Institute, he collected garbage, painted curbs, cut grass, and worked on roads for the town. To outsiders, that labor would later look like an astonishing detour. To Bird, it was familiar, useful, and close to home. In February of 1975, Bird's father, Joe, died after years in which poverty and divorce had already strained the family. Larry rarely used the loss to explain himself publicly. Basketball simply became the most dependable structure available to him. Work produced improvement, and improvement created certainty. When Indiana State offered a second route into college basketball, he took it. At Indiana State, Bird transformed a program that had never occupied the center of the national conversation. In his senior season, the Sycamores completed the regular season 29-0, then reached the national championship at 33-0. Bird averaged nearly 29 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists. He scored like a primary option, rebounded like a center, and passed as if he could watch all 10 players at once. Indiana State was perfect because every possession ran through his understanding of where the next advantage would appear. The championship game placed him opposite Irvin Johnson of Michigan State. Magic was expressive, quick, and comfortable, turning basketball into a public celebration. Bird was guarded, economical, and happiest when the work spoke for him. Television could not have designed a cleaner contra seat. Michigan State won 75-64. Bird scored 19 points on 7 of 21 shooting, and Indiana State's perfect season ended one victory short. On the largest stage either had known, Magic received the ending Bird wanted. Every future meeting would carry that memory. Boston had already selected Bird 6th in the 1978 draft and waited through his final college season to sign him. On June 8, 1979, The sides agreed to a 5-year contract worth $3.25 million, making him the highest-paid rookie in professional sports. Only a few years separated municipal work in French Lick from a record contract in Boston. The money changed his circumstances, not the habits that had carried him there. The Celtics had won 29 games in the season before Bird arrived. In his rookie year, they won 61. A 32-victory improvement can make a team look completely rebuilt, but much of the roster was still the same. The largest difference was a rookie forward averaging 21.3 points, 10.4 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and 1.7 steals. Bird made the All-Star team, won Rookie of the Year, and turned every teammate's job into something clearer. Shooters received the ball earlier. Cutters discovered passing lanes they had not known were open. Big men could run because Bird would reward the effort. He did not need to dominate the ball to dominate the shape of a possession. Opponents also discovered the other side of him. Bird remembered who had dismissed him, who had relaxed while guarding him, and who had answered his words. Michael Jordan later called Bird the best trash talker he had faced and described it carefully. He talks a lot of trash, good trash, not dirty trash, good trash. Bird's talk was rarely random noise. It functioned like another test. He might tell a defender where the shot was coming from, then use the defender's anticipation against him. He wanted the opponent thinking about Larry Bird instead of the next rotation. The confidence sounded outrageous because he kept supplying evidence. Boston completed the front line around him before his second season. The Celtics drafted Kevin McHale and acquired Robert Parrish from Golden State, joining 2 future Hall of Famers with the young star already changing the franchise. Their first championship run nearly ended in the Eastern Conference Finals against Philadelphia. The Celtics fell behind 3-1, then won the last 3 games by a combined margin of 5 points. Bird scored the decisive basket late in Game 7, reading a loose rebound and creating the shot that pushed Boston ahead. The comeback demanded 3 consecutive nights of execution under pressure, exactly the kind of environment in which his stubbornness became useful rather than dangerous. Boston defeated Houston in 6 games in the 1981 Finals, with Cedric Maxwell named Finals Most Valuable Player. Bird's scoring came and went, yet he averaged more than 15 rebounds and 7 assists in the series. In Game 1, he missed a jumper, followed the ball through traffic, caught his own rebound in midair, switched hands, and finished before landing out of bounds. He had calculated where the miss was going while everyone else was still watching the shot. Boston's turnaround was real, but the rivalry that started in college remained unsettled. The Celtics and Lakers moved toward each other across the early 1980s, building opposite versions of excellence. Los Angeles played with speed, width, and Magic's ability to turn a rebound into a fast break before the defense could organize. Boston played through angles, half-court precision, physical rebounding, and Bird's command of space. They finally met in the 1984 NBA Finals, 5 years after the college championship had separated them. The Lakers embarrassed Boston in Game 3, winning by 33 points. Bird responded publicly that the Celtics had played like sissies. It was blunt, insulting, and intended to provoke an answer from his teammates. Game 4 became one of the most physical finals games of the era. McHale clotheslined Kurt Rambis on a drive, tempers rose, and Boston forced overtime before winning. The series returned to the Garden for Game 7, where heat and humidity turned the building into another opponent. Boston won 111-102. Bird dictated the series with 27 points and 14 rebounds per game, earning both his first regular season MVP and his first finals MVP. Game 5 had already demonstrated how completely Boston could turn its building into part of the contest. With no modern air conditioning inside the Garden, the temperature climbed above 90 degrees. The Lakers used oxygen on the bench. Bird played 42 minutes, scored 34 points, and collected 17 rebounds as Boston seized the advantage. His game did not depend on a fresh first step, so exhaustion changed him differently from faster players. He could still find the same passing window and predict the same rebound while everyone moved more slowly. By Game 7, Los Angeles understood that it was facing Bird's ability to make discomfort feel normal. The victory over Magic mattered differently from the championship against Houston. Bird had defeated the rival who owned the ending of their college story, but nothing had closed. Los Angeles returned in 1985, while Bird completed the best-scoring season of his career at nearly 29 points per game. On March 12th, he scored 60 against Atlanta, making shots from the post, the perimeter, and angles that left the Hawks bench reacting in disbelief. Bird won a second consecutive MVP, and Boston again reached the finals. The 60-point game took place in New Orleans, where the Hawks were playing a temporary home date. Bird scored 19 in the fourth quarter and reached 60 on a difficult jumper directly in front of Atlanta's bench. Several Hawks reserves leaped from their seats and fell into one another, reacting less like opponents than witnesses. Robert Parrish later remembered the motive. McHale had recently scored 56 and taken Boston's single-game record. Bird wanted it back. Doc Rivers, then an Atlanta guard, remembered Bird tormenting Dominique Wilkins while calling the shots he intended to make. Professional players who were losing the game still could not prevent themselves from celebrating what they saw. Jordan called Bird's talk "good trash," a challenge backed by performance. Payton remembered him identifying the location of a coming shot and explaining why the defender could not stop it. Byron Scott said Bird talked more than anybody he had ever faced. His words mattered because the ball usually followed the prediction. This time, the Lakers took the ending. After losing Game 1 by 34 points in what Boston fans called the Memorial Day Massacre, Los Angeles recovered and won the series in 6. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 38 years old, became Finals MVP. The Lakers celebrated the clinching victory on the Boston Garden floor, something the franchise had never done in its previous finals battles with the Celtics. Bird had reached an individual level few forwards had ever occupied, but the season ended with Magic and Kareem taking the championship from his home court. Greatness had not removed the possibility of humiliation. It had simply made the response more urgent. The rivalry looked personal because neither man allowed the other to relax. Away from cameras, however, Bird and Magic barely knew each other. That changed when Converse arranged a commercial at Bird's home in Indiana during the summer of 1985. Bird expected Magic to arrive, complete the work, and leave. Instead, they broke for lunch. Magic sat with Georgia Bird, and the conversation moved beyond basketball. Each man discovered that the public opposite standing across from him understood the same burden. An entire league had made their rivalry its central drama, and neither could afford to let the other gain ground. Their friendship did not weaken the competition. It made the competition more personal in a different way. Bird could dislike the Lakers and still understand why Magic's success pushed him back into the gym. Magic could celebrate beating Boston and still recognize that the league looked different when Bird was healthy. The commercial became a quiet turning point because it humanized the one opponent each had used as a measuring device. When Magic later faced a serious health crisis, Bird's concern was immediate. When Bird retired, Magic did not appear in Boston merely because a television producer needed the old rivalry. He appeared because the chase had become one of the central relationships of both lives. That summer, Bird returned to Indiana and began working on the driveway at his mother's home. He had grown up doing physical labor and believed family obligations were personal. Paying a crew would have been easier, but ease had never proved anything to him. While shoveling crushed rock, he strained his back badly enough for the problem to follow him into the seasons ahead. The driveway did not cause every injury that followed. It revealed the pattern connecting them. Bird still could not accept protection from work another person could perform. For the moment, Bird was healthy enough to answer the loss. Boston added Bill Walton before the 1985 through 86 season, giving the front court an extraordinary passer and reserve center. The Celtics won 67 games and went 40 and won at home during the regular season, then 10-0 at home in the playoffs. Bird averaged 25.8 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 6.8 assists. He shot over 49% from the field, better than 42% from three, and almost 90% from the line. It was the most complete season of his career. On February 14, 1986, that command became almost playful. Bird told teammates he intended to use his left hand for much of a game in Portland. 10 of his 21 made field goals came with the left, yet he still finished with 47 points, 14 rebounds, and 11 assists. He forced overtime, then made the winning shot with 3 seconds, remaining in a 1-point victory. Bird had become so comfortable solving the normal version of the sport that he could create another problem for himself and still decide the ending. At the first 3-point shootout, Bird entered a room filled with elite shooters and reportedly asked which one of them was going to finish second. He won, then returned to win in each of the next 2 years. In 1988, still wearing his warm-up jacket, he needed the final 3 balls from the left corner. All 3 fell. Bird raised one finger and began walking away before the last shot reached the rim. Gary Payton, who built his own reputation as one of basketball's most relentless talkers, explained why that confidence carried unusual weight. He had the ultimate game, and he used to back it up. Boston met Houston in the 1986 finals and won in 6 games. In the clincher, Bird produced 29 points, 11 rebounds, and 12 assists. Across the series, he averaged nearly a triple-double and earned his second finals MVP. He had now won 3 consecutive regular season MVP awards, joining Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain as the only players to accomplish that feat. The young man who once left Indiana University because the campus felt too large had become the mind behind one of the greatest teams ever assembled. Bird's scoring attracted the highlights, but his passing made the 1986 Celtics so difficult to defend. He delivered the ball through traffic and into spaces teammates had not yet reached. Parrish could run directly to the rim, McHale could establish position, and Dennis Johnson could cut behind a defender watching Bird. Boston's stars became more dangerous because the next pass was always an attacking decision. The next season showed both the durability of his brilliance and the fragility around it. 2 days after the 1986 draft, Boston lost Len Bias, the young forward expected to help carry the dynasty into its next phase. Walton's availability collapsed. McHale played through a serious foot injury. Bird remained an MVP-level force, and Boston reached the Eastern Conference Finals against Detroit, a younger team no longer interested in waiting for the Celtics to age. With 5 seconds remaining in Game 5, Detroit led 107-106 and had the ball beneath its own basket. Isiah Thomas looked toward Bill Laimbeer and attempted the inbound pass. Bird, who had been positioned near the lane, recognized the play before the ball arrived. He stepped in front, caught it inches from the baseline, and immediately passed to Dennis Johnson for the winning layup. The steal lasted only a few seconds, but it contained almost every part of Bird's game: anticipation, balance, awareness of a teammate's movement, and complete calm after the first brilliant act. Years later, Thomas could laugh while remembering the speed of the reaction. "I never saw him run that damn fast, by the way," he said. Boston survived the series in 7. What followed Game 7 became one of the most uncomfortable chapters of Bird's career. Detroit rookie Dennis Rodman told reporters that Bird was overrated and received extra recognition because he was white. Thomas answered with sarcasm that was interpreted as agreement, saying that if Bird were black, he would be considered merely another good player. The comments escaped the defeated locker room and turned the series into a national argument about race and the way basketball greatness was described. Bird and Thomas appeared together before reporters. Thomas said he had been joking and did not believe Bird's achievements were a product of race. Bird accepted the explanation and refused to make the episode a permanent feud. The racial context was real. So was the verdict of the Black Stars who had competed against Bird directly. Kareem called him possibly the best opponent of his career. Jordan respected the psychological pressure. Wilkins remembered shot-making he had never seen. Payton respected that Bird announced the play and completed it. The players who faced him had settled the basketball question themselves. The finals placed Bird against Magic for the third and final time. Los Angeles was deeper and healthier, and Magic dictated the series at nearly a triple-double per game. His junior skyhook in Game 4 became its defining shot, and the Lakers won in 6. Magic now led their professional finals rivalry 2-1. In their finals meetings, the edge belonged to Magic, while the rivalry had made both careers more meaningful. Bird returned for 1987 through 88 and averaged nearly 30 points, the highest mark of his career, while completing a second consecutive 50-40-90 season. The league around Boston was changing. Detroit was rising, Chicago had Michael Jordan, and Atlanta had Dominique Wilkins. The Celtics remained dangerous, but the conference was no longer waiting for them. Atlanta pushed Boston to a 7th game in the 1988 Eastern Conference semifinals. Wilkins entered the deciding afternoon determined to break through and scored 47 points on 19 of 23 shooting. In the fourth quarter, Bird answered with 20 points of his own. The two stars traded jumpers, while every empty possession became more expensive. Wilkins later described what it felt like from the other side. "I've just never seen nobody hit shots like that down the stretch of a game." Bird finished with 34 points, Boston won 118-116, and Wilkins was left with one of the greatest playoff performances ever delivered in defeat. The final minutes made the respect visible. Wilkins kept answering from the wing and in transition. Bird worked through the half court, finding space by inches and releasing the ball before the contest could arrive. Late in the game, Bird told Wilkins that both of them deserved to win, but one of them had to go home. The statement was competitive and strangely generous. Bird was not offering comfort. He was acknowledging that Wilkins had reached the same rare level of concentration. Atlanta lost, but the duel became part of both men's legacies, not merely another Boston victory. The duel also marked the edge of Bird's physical peak. His back already hurt, the mileage was accumulating, and the break was only months away. Yet, when the season narrowed to one quarter, his decisions became cleaner rather than more frantic. The same stubbornness that complicated rest made pressure feel familiar. Boston's season ended against Detroit in the conference finals. 6 games into the next season, bone spurs in both heels required surgery. For the first time since entering the league, Bird had to watch almost an entire season without him. Boston fell from 57 wins to 42 and exited the playoffs in the first round. Until then, Bird had played at least 74 games in each of his first 9 seasons, averaging around 40 minutes, while Boston repeatedly advanced deep into the playoffs. From 1984 through 1988 alone, the Celtics added 85 postseason games to the regular seasons. His career was only 9 years old, but the accumulated workload belonged to a much older player. He returned the following season at age 33 and immediately proved that missing a year had not erased his understanding of the game. Bird played 75 games, made the All-Star team, and finished among the league leaders in minutes. The comeback looked reassuring, but it also revealed how he responded to forced rest by returning to almost 39 minutes per game. Rehabilitation had restored access to the court. It had not taught him moderation. The 1990 through 91 Celtics opened 29-5, appearing capable of one more serious run. Then a compressed nerve root in Bird's back began dictating his schedule. He missed 22 games. When he played, changing direction could send pain through his leg. Sitting on the bench could be worse than lying flat on the floor. In the first round against Indiana, Bird fell hard in Game 5, bruising his face and aggravating the pain. He went to the locker room, then returned in the third quarter and helped Boston win 124-121. The comeback became another Bird legend and another example of his refusal to stop. After the season, surgeons removed a disc from his back in an attempt to relieve pressure on the nerve. The operation gave him another chance, not a reset. In 1991 through 92, he appeared in only 45 games. Between appearances, cameras captured one of the strangest images of a superstar's final season. Bird lying on his stomach beside the bench because sitting upright placed too much pressure on his back. He was still in uniform, still reading the game, but he could no longer occupy an ordinary chair comfortably. On March 15, 1992, Portland visited Boston with one of the strongest teams in the league. For one night, prime Larry Bird reappeared. He played 54 minutes in a double overtime game and finished with 49 points, 14 rebounds, 12 assists, and 4 steals. He scored Boston's final 9 points of regulation and hit the tying three with 2 seconds left. The Celtics won 152-148. Clyde Drexler, who had just watched a 35-year-old with chronic back pain command the game, offered the only reasonable summary. Anytime you have Bird on the floor, anything can happen. Bird could no longer rely on movement for an entire night, so he manipulated timing. He used pump fakes to make younger defenders leave the floor, passed before double teams closed, and saved enough balance for the shot Boston needed at the end of regulation. Between possessions, the stiffness returned. Once play resumed, his mind still moved faster than the defense. The ability was still there. Reliable access to it was disappearing. Bird could shoot over length, direct an offense, anticipate a rotation, and decide a game against an elite opponent. Over his final 2 regular seasons, Boston went 77-28 when he played and 30-29 without him. The Celtics kept hoping his back would allow one more run. The final playoffs ended against Cleveland. Bird missed the opening portion of Boston's postseason because of his back and returned in limited form during the conference semifinals. In Game 6 at Boston Garden, with the Celtics facing elimination, he produced 16 points, 14 assists, and 6 rebounds in 37 minutes as Boston forced a 7th game. Cleveland won the decider. There was no perfect farewell shot, only Bird trying to extract one more useful night from a failing back. That summer, he joined Magic, Jordan, Barkley, Drexler, and the rest of the original Dream Team at the Barcelona Olympics. Bird's back limited his minutes, but his presence connected the new global era of basketball to the rivalry that had helped create it. 13 years after Indiana State and Michigan State, Bird and Magic wore the same uniform and won the same gold medal. It was reconciliation without erasing competition. Each man understood that part of his own career had been built by chasing the other. On August 18, 1992, Bird announced his retirement. He had played 13 NBA seasons, all for Boston, reaching 5 finals and winning 3 championships. He left with 3 regular season MVP awards, 2 finals MVP awards, 12 All-Star selections, and career averages of 24.3 points, 10 rebounds, and 6.3 assists. Those totals describe an all-time player. They do not capture the unease of his ending. He was not retiring because the game had passed him by. His back simply no longer let him play often enough for his mind and skill to matter. The timing protected him from the kind of farewell season built around ceremony. He had completed the Olympics only days earlier and then made the decision official. There was no year of scheduled tributes in opposing arenas, no final visit designed to stop the game for applause. Bird's last NBA appearance had been the Game 7 loss in Cleveland. That abruptness suited a player who had never been comfortable turning private emotion into public performance. But it also left Boston with unfinished gratitude. The franchise needed a separate night to explain what 13 seasons had meant. Boston held Larry Bird Night on February 4, 1993. The ceremony brought former teammates, coaches, family members, and one visitor from Los Angeles onto the Garden floor. Magic Johnson arrived wearing Lakers colors, then revealed a Celtics shirt beneath them. Their rivalry had once been marketed through contrast: black and white, Los Angeles and Boston, Showtime and the working class, smile and scowl. By retirement, those labels had become too small for what the men understood about each other. Magic looked at Bird and delivered the judgment the evening had been building toward. Larry, there will never, ever be another Larry Bird. Retirement removed the pain of playing, but it did not remove Bird's need to compete through basketball. He became head coach of the Indiana Pacers in 1997, despite having no previous coaching experience. In his first season, Indiana won 58 games, pushed Jordan's Bulls to 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Bird was named Coach of the Year. 2 years later, the Pacers reached the NBA Finals. Bird stepped away after 3 seasons because he had always believed a coach had a limited window before players stopped hearing the message. Coaching demanded a different version of Bird. He had to communicate, delegate, and trust players to execute work he could only describe. Reggie Miller, Jalen Rose, Mark Jackson, Rick Smits, and the rest of the Pacers did not need him to recreate Boston. They needed him to recognize what their roster could become. Indiana improved from 39 wins before his arrival to 58 in his first season, echoing the transformation Bird had produced as a rookie player. The 1998 conference finals against Chicago brought him back into direct competition with Jordan, now from the sideline. Indiana became the only team to take the championship Bulls to a 7th game during their 6 title runs. The Pacers lost, but Bird's calm reinforced something his opponents had understood for years. His advantage was never simply that he tolerated more work. He processed the game at a level that could be transferred to other people. In 2000, Indiana finally reached the finals before losing to the Lakers. Bird had taken a team to the last series without making a pass, grabbing a rebound, or taking the final shot himself. He later moved into Indiana's front office and won Executive of the Year in 2012. After stepping away briefly, he returned as president of basketball operations in 2013 and remained in the role until 2017. Bird became the first person in NBA history to win Rookie of the Year, regular season MVP, Finals MVP, All-Star Game MVP, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year. His vision, preparation, and ability to organize other people survived long after his playing career ended. The driveway mattered because it revealed the rule Bird had written for himself. If work needed doing, he did it. If pain could be crossed, he crossed it. That rule carried him out of poverty, back from an abandoned scholarship, through an undefeated college run, and into the center of the NBA. It survived the Lakers, the Pistons, the Hawks, 2 damaged heels, and a compressed nerve in his spine. It made Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Gary Payton, Dominique Wilkins, Isiah Thomas, Clyde Drexler, and Magic Johnson describe him with the respect reserved for somebody who had made their own greatness harder to reach. But the rule had no stopping point. Bird treated rest like losing because work had been the most reliable protection he had known since childhood. When rest became the only way to protect his career, he could not recognize it as part of the job. The tragedy is not that Larry Bird failed to become what people expected. He became more. The tragedy is that his mind could still direct a game after his back made regular competition impossible. Another championship may have existed in the years his back took away, or Boston's aging roster may already have reached its limit. What remained visible was enough. At 35, Bird could still produce 49 points, 14 rebounds, and 12 assists against a contender, then arrived days later, unsure whether his back would let him sit. Work had solved almost everything in his life. Only afterward, as a coach and executive, did he prove that the same basketball mind could build winners without taking another shot. The body finally made him stop. The game discovered that stopping him from playing was not the same as removing his influence.